I actually have abandoned this office. This was my office in the 80s. And I really liked it because it had windows that out onto the street and had a stairway down to the studio. And I still like it. But I pretty much have abandoned it because in 2003, when my last employees left, I had to start writing my own checks. I was telling you about that a little earlier. I had to do my own bookkeeping. So I actually had to move into my bookkeeper's office because that's where all the stuff is, where you write your checks and you file your tax returns and all that stuff. And in here, I'd love to come back in, move back into my office someday, I guess, but it needs a lot of cleaning. I did bring in a weight set because I lived here for a while and I like to work out. So I brought in my weight set and my piano and even a TV and a couch. So it'll be fun to move back in here someday. There's a shelf back here right behind you that has a few things on it, like a favorite record player that you would never want to plug in now, because look what happens to wires after 30 years. They just crumble. The insulation just crumbles off of the wires. God knows what would happen if you plug that in. And here are the anti-gravity freedom machines that we took to the convention in 1996, I think it was, the Consumer Electronics Show, and introduced the machine. It had been in development for 15 years at that point, and I showed it off, and I have a good video of that too. I'll have to show you. But and everybody thought it was interesting and exciting, but the people who were kind of on the leading edge were starting to use email on the internet, and the internet was really just starting to get known. Even Bill Gates had just figured out what the internet was less than a year before, and he got kind of caught by surprise as well as I did by the internet. It was kind of funny, but anyway, so I brought my anti-gravity freedom machines home, and they've been sitting here ever since. But you can see that we left nothing out of this baby, even the gratuitous design curves, just like George Jetson would have wanted. George Jetson, by the way, was a major influence on most of the lives of the kids from the 60s. We're still waiting for flying cars. You'll see that referred to quite a bit by old people that are still waiting for the inventions of George Jetson's age. So there's the anti-gravity freedom machine. It was very easy to use. In fact, no matter what, that was the key of it. That's what the anti-gravity meant. Gravity is the force that holds you down, and the PCs were full of gravity. And so this was the anti-gravity machine. You didn't have to know anything. If you wanted to write a letter to somebody, an instant letter, you just pressed the write a letter button. It was right there. And see, everything was coded. You write a letter, and then it would put a screen on here. You'd type your letter, and you'd press send letter, and it would put the people on the screen that you could send your letter to. And then you used this pointing device to pick the person off the screen that you want to send it to, and bang, it went out. And you had a little light that would flash to tell you when you had new mail. And if you had mail that you hadn't read, that light would flash. The unsent. Oh, that's the unsent mail. That means a letter hadn't gone out. So new mail is letters you haven't read. I've actually never sat here before. This is my dad's desk, and it still has, all this dust that you see on this desk. It's like I'd love to clean it for my dad. But he doesn't come here anymore. My dad was my house counsel during all the years, the showbiz years, and even the years after that. My dad did everything for me as a lawyer. He has his lawyer books over on the side, and he has his anti-gravity freedom machine right here, so when we communicated, he'd get his messages right here. And he's even got something here. I guess the last time he was in here must have been 2004, because he's got his tax deed papers in here from 2004 and some old cassettes that he found that he wanted to give me. But this was his office, and it's right next door to mine. We had adjoining doors, and we were buds. My dad and I have always been buds, and he's always taken care of me, and he's always made sure that my contracts were signed and that everything was done legally, and he even has his own gavel. So I'm a little embarrassed it's so messy, but you could actually draw pictures in this dust. Here's a piano that one of our writers and singers used to use, the singer that did Fats's voice. And you can see it still kind of works. Well, Well, we bought the piano for $50 in 1980. Might be worth $50 today. It was a good investment. This room here has this is where I'm storing the second generation Dukes. These are the robot creations that will actually play the drums.
I like the beat.
And I really will work on this, whether it's when I finally retire or finally have the time to do it. But these characters have completely articulated arms and body movements so that they can play a full set of drums. And when I get back to working on these characters, you may see this. This might be something that'll look like it came out of the 21st century, but really it's a canceled research project from 1983 that had to be canceled when Showbiz Pizza Place ran out of money. So there's also some other old stuff in this room. Like, for example, this is the Wolfman that was originally in the Wolfpack 5 before he became Rolf and got a puppet. So this is kind of rare that you would ever see a Wolfman here like this with no puppet on his arm. And he also has a little facial hair, as you can see, and otherwise he's dapper, just like good old Rolf. Here's a fortune teller that we built thinking that might be a good production item. Again, another spec item, something we spent a lot of money on but never finished. He's got a head. The head actually goes on this above the shoulders, but I think somebody stole something out of it, a cylinder or a valve or something, and then just left the head here. And let's see, behind these shelves, these shelves have the stuff on them that we needed to manufacture the anti-gravity freedom machines, like the boxes and the monitors and so forth. But behind the shelves is a bear show. And this bear show was something that we built in 1978 or 79 and sold it to a customer. And then around 83, I decided I wanted to get it back from the customer. So he wanted to sell it. I bought it back. And it was kind of a mistake to do that because now, it's just back there in one of those corners. But I thought at that point that someday we might do something great and we might be famous and somebody would want to see this thing. But as it is, you're the first people who might want to see it? Oh, good. Then it was worth it. Here it is. That's the bear show. And it's actually playable. It actually does work. But this is where Billy Bob first originated and some of the other characters. In the course of an inventor's career, every inventor feels like he had an idea or an invention that was either taken from him or somebody else thought of and did it before he got it out. And that can be frustrating, very frustrating, especially when that idea becomes successful. And that's the case of the whack-a-mole. I was very young. It was 1976. I had just gone to the first IAAPA convention, and I met a customer who was actually a carnival operator who asked me to invent the whack-a-mole. So really, I'm going to give you the story behind the idea of the whack-a-mole. I have to give really the credit of the idea to this guy whose name I believe was Denny Denton. And I remember Denton or Denny or something like that. He came to me and he said, hey, over there in booth number 13 are a bunch of Japanese guys who have this new game with these animals that pop up out of holes, electrically activated, and you hit them with a hammer. So the idea wasn't mine that those things would pop out of holes. Basically, some Japanese guys did it. And he said, but their machine doesn't work right. It's always failing. And we don't even know what it's called because it's got some kind of Japanese name to it. And it's very expensive. And these guys can't even speak English, so I can't even buy the game from them. Can you build that for me? So I went to work on it. And I designed a system, sculpted the little moles that would come up. I invented the name Whack-A-Mole. I did come up with that name. And invented the system of air cylinders that would push the devices up and the micro switches that would register the hits and the system that would actually activate the moles coming up and down. So I named it and created the sculpture and got it out and built this for this Denny Denton guy. And I thought, well, this would be great. Why don't we go into business building this together? But Denny took the game as I designed it and invented it, and he took it to another guy, Bob Space Racers over in Daytona Beach, and sold it to him. Bob Space Racers got my prototype, and Bob Casada, who owns Bob Space Racers, called me up and said, Aaron, so you built this whack-a-mole. Will you come over to Daytona and let's talk about it? And I went over to Daytona and sat down in front of him, and he said, I want you to tell me how it works. It ran off of a cassette tape. The tones came off the tape. It went into these modules, which activated the little moles. He asked me how it worked, and I refused to tell him. And he laughed at me. He says, hey, look, if you don't tell me how it works, we'll figure it out and we'll build our own. I said, okay, help yourself. So I didn't really resent him for it because I had bigger fish to fry. I never really thought much of it anyway, and I considered myself somewhat of a rip-off guy on the whack-a-mole anyway. The irony of the whack-a-mole story is that when I finally launched the Showbiz Pizza Place with Bob Brock, and we became the largest user of video games and arcade equipment in the world, the whack-a-mole was one of our games. And we bought the whack-a-moles from Bob's Space Racers. In fact, we bought hundreds of them. We bought at least 2 of them for every restaurant. We had 200 restaurants. We bought like 400 whack-a-moles from Bob Casada during the time that I was with Showbiz Pizza Place. Now, what's really funny is I saw Bob at the convention at the IAAPA around 1995. He was sitting up on a big chair up at his booth. You know, they have a huge booth. Every year I go by there, it's 2. I go by there and I take the mallet and I start hitting those guys. And I tell one of the salesmen who's standing there, hey, guess what? I invented this game. And they always hate me for it. And they say, you did not. And I said, yes, I did. Just ask Bob Casada. Well, one year Bob was there at the convention. And I went up to him and I said, hey, Bob, how you doing? You're looking great. And I reached my hand out to shake hands with him, and he wouldn't shake hands with me. In fact, he wouldn't even say a word. And I said, you remember me? I'm Aaron Fector. I'm the inventor of the whack-a-mole. And he just sat there, just as quiet as he could be, almost like he thought I had a battery of attorneys behind me ready to launch into him. But I'm not going to sue for the whack-a-mole. I'm glad he did well with it. And I did well. Not as well as he did with the whack-a-mole. But that's the way things go, and that's the way things go for inventors all the time. But the whack-a-mole that you see now that has that mole, that sculpture that comes out of the hole, that's the exact same sculpture that I created. The name whack-a-mole is the one that I coined and should have trademarked. And so now Bob Space Racers is claiming they created the game. But the one that they've created and copied is exactly the one I created, which was basically a rip-off of those nice little Japanese guys that inspired Denny Denton to ask me to build it in 1976. And there's the real story behind the whack-a-mole. In order to kind of give the characters a little more personality, we developed their character in skits. So we put together a lot of skits that went with some of the songs. And so that's where one of those skits came in. And the message was simply, why are we buying oil from countries that are running out of oil and are charging too much for it and that we're having problems with anyway? And so Billy Bob and Looney Bird decided that they would sort of act like that the moonshine that they were creating, that Looney Bird liked to drink, was actually being created to solve the world's energy crisis.
So long, Mrs. Jones. See you later, Billy Bob. Well, Looney Bird, it sure has been a busy day.
I know, Billy Bob. This goofy gas has been selling like hotcakes.
You're right there, Looney Bird. You know, you better go down and check and see how much we got before any more customers come in, okay?
Boy, you said it. Right away, Billy Bob.
You know, me and the Looney Bird feel that we owe it to America to come up with some form of alternative fuel. You know, with the price of gas the way it is and all. You know, it's really important for everybody to do their part and do what they can to sort of help America come by with another fuel source. And that's why we invented Goofy Gas. It's all natural, and it's made from fresh corn squeezins, and we make it right here at Smitty's Super Service Station. And every Tuesday here at Smitty's Super Service Station, it's Goofy Gas Day. And you know what that means, don't you? That means you get a tank full free with a fill-up. Right, Looney Bird?
Right, Billy Bob.
So do your part to help your country's energy problems. And come into Smitty's Super Service Station and try a tank full of Goofy Gas. It's only 59 cents a gallon.
Yeah, or $1.69 a six-pack.
Back in the old days, it was okay to have a drunk bird on a show. So Looney Bird was always drunk. He was down there sort of keeping the level in check, as it were. So Back here is the Moon Rocker show. This was converted from a center stage rocket-fire explosion. And as you can see, the characters are different. They are not Fats and Mitsy and Beach Bear, and I can't really remember the names of the characters right now, but we did this show in '85. And this show was sort of, while we were still young and idealistic, this was going to be our offering to the world to tell the world in animatronic form that they're doing the right thing with energy conservation and avoiding nuclear war. Nuclear war was a big threat in '85, much bigger than it is now. There was even a clock that was ticking down. I bet you they still have it. That was telling us how many seconds we have till doomsday. And that clock was right on the edge of doomsday because the Russians were going to blow us off the map and then we were going to blow them off the map. Nobody knew that in '89, the financial crisis of Russia would then end that problem. But we had a message, and it's the Moon Rockers that came back from the year 2085, 100 years into the future, a band that lived inside the moon. That we can't see them because they're inside the moon. And they're inside the moon, and they come back in time. They're actually time travelers, 100 years, to get on MTV, which had just started, and to deliver the message that the world is doing the right thing, and just keep at it.
Stethoscope and bend it.
On the surface he was right, there is no life. Oh, the would never look in it.
Inside you see, it's a great big party.
And they're playing all those rock and roll songs. So put your toes goes down. I love some bros.
You could hear them playing all night long.
Rockers from the sea inside the moon. The moon rockers from the sea inside the moon.
I got these two characters from another fan that he had some extra characters and I bought them from him, and I didn't have a way to make them run. All they did is what they're doing right now, just sitting there for show, but I wanted to bring them to life, and there was no programmer that I was aware of at the time. So I contacted Aaron Fector, the owner of Creative Engineering, and asked him if he could build me a box to bring my show to life, and he did. And I had a bunch of shows that played off of that, and that's what got it all started with the whole rocket fire explosion, because that's how I met Aaron, and we just really hit it off good and got to talking, and he made it so I could buy the whole show. The way we built this porch, we had to bring boards in. There's actually a sliding glass door behind that wall that you can't see anymore. We brought board in by board, and we built the main floor frame inside this room. It was just a disaster, a construction zone in here. And just little bit by little bit, me and a friend of mine, he's real good with construction, and I was really lucky to have a friend like that knew how to do this. And the design was mine and a friend of mine's, and I just really think it went really great. And as far as I know, I have the only front porch in a house that I know of. Another little small, tiny little hobby that I would have is I like collecting Halloween type stuff. I'm into certain horror films. One little gag I like to have here in my yard is my hearse. I did have it in the front yard. That was like my security system. With nobody coming in my yard because I had the hearse. So I ended up just having to pull it in the back because it was really making people uncomfortable.
Yeah, scaring people. So you like horror films, huh?
Yes.
What are some of your favorite horror films?
My very favorite is Michael Myers' Halloween with the white mask. I like it because he don't talk. He's always so calm, and you know, he's just a force like a machine. You know, he don't have a conscience or nothing, and that's what makes it scary. And I like stuff like that. And my second favorite was Freddy Krueger that had the glove with the knives on it. I was always really into that. Especially the first one was really my favorite. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. Hi everybody, Chris here. I'd like to welcome y'all to my show and my building. There's been a lot of questions on the internet asking what makes this show work, what makes it run, and not just the old shows, but especially now with the new shows being programmed today. I've even seen where there's been lots of rumors go around with their own opinions on what makes the show run. Well, today I'm here to end that rumor for you. I'm going to take you on a little small tour of my building and show you what makes them run, what makes them tick, and how they get programmed. So come on, let's go out to the back of the building to start out with, and I'll show you the air compressors, because yes, they run on air. Follow me to the back. If you can see here, come on around here. You can see here, we got two red tanks. Both of the red tanks have engines on them. Those motors are the ones that run to air up the show, keep the show's air going. They fill up these two red tanks, but these two tanks also fill up the other three storage tanks here. So I have a total of 5 storage tanks of air. That leads to this 1-inch pipe here. This 1-inch regulator and 1-inch pipe that goes back inside the building. So come on back inside and I'll show you what happens from there. Now I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to take you to the back. So you won't see me now, you just hear me. I'm going to take you to the back and show you how it works. The air line comes in to this big manifold that's got all these air lines on it. The air line comes in from the back of the building into this manifold with all the air lines going to each individual character. And there's a bunch of computer wires, as well as really just a whole bunch of wires back here. There's a bunch of computer wires that goes to this computer box here, which is not plugged in at this very moment. They plug into the back of this computer box here. It's called the gray box. Remember that. You're going to hear that name again. Inside the gray box is 2 drawers that look exactly alike. They got all these computer cards in here that runs the show. Bottom drawer looks the same as the top. Got all the computer cards in here. And then you got this panel back here. It's called the RF panel. All this panel does is run the lights. All the different colored lights on the top and the bottom, all the different stages. Got a bunch of wires back here. Now if you come back here, I'm going to show you what the gray box, the gray computer box that runs the show, what it tells the characters to do and how does it tell them what to do. Now what we're going to do right now is we're going to lift the trap door up for Mitsy Mozzarella here. We're going to lift up her trap door. We're going to give you a little sneak peek at what makes her tick. One. Now, Sandy, if you could show the arm lifting up and down. Alright, now let me show them how I do that. Come in here and let's see the Mac valve. This is called a Mac valve. It's a bunch of valve banks. You can see these black wires here. That's the where the computer cable goes to the gray box. The computer cable goes to each one of these movements and tells each one turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. Right? Now, if you can see on the other side of this valve bank, can you see that?
Yes.
There's a little clearest tube coming out. There's two of them actually coming out of each bank. That's the air. The air comes in so that it can move. The electricity from the computer cable tells it to move, and the air makes it possible because there's air cylinders all inside of the character. Now, so let me put the trap door back. So, you see how that works? Air compressors outside build up the air and come inside and break down into little bitty tiny lines and break down into these MAC valves here. And then you have computer wires that come from a gray box computer that tells each one of them blocks which one to put air into the cylinders inside the characters. And it's just a pneumatic air cylinder that lifts up and lets in and out. That's all it does. Now, what tells the gray box what to do? That's the simple part. We come over here to my computer. Up underneath this table here is a simple everyday home computer. What makes this one separate from any other computer, though, it has a built-in program that you can't just buy in the store, but it is a program that was built to run the animatronic show, namely this show. Alright, so what I do is I set up a list. I can do up to 8 movements at a time. I wouldn't suggest it, but you can do up to 8 movements at a time. And for this, we're going to ask for Billy Bob's help to come out. But if you look at my keyboard here, I've already got it pre-programmed in the computer that when I push the L button, nothing happens. When I push the L button, the computer tells the gray box to open the curtains because I programmed it to do that. Alright, now also I have already pre-programmed to the J button on the keyboard here, his mouth. There's Billy Bob's mouth. Now, the way recording works, the audio and everything is inside of this regular home computer. And you just follow and listening to the music, and you push the button. And for example, I'll say, "Hi, I'm Billy Bob." Alright, let's try that again. Let's look. "Hi, I'm Billy Bob." Right? Now, if you point it back here on the keyboard, you'll see me hitting the button. "Hi, I'm Billy Bob." Now, if you notice, I skipped a syllable on Billy. I didn't do Lee of Billy because it would look like his mouth is chattering. Put it back on Billy Bob and let's do every syllable. "Hi, I'm Billy Bob." See, it looks like his mouth is chattering. It's just a bunch of movements. But put it back on Billy Bob's mouth and we're going to skip the syllable of "Hi, I'm Billy Bob." Looks better. Looks more natural. Looks like his mouth is really saying that, even though that was a poor interpretation of me doing Billy Bob. But you get the idea anyway. And this is how it's very tedious, very time consuming. You really got to be faithful to the song you're doing and to the project in general, because each movement is done separate. There's no magic button that you push that automatically the characters jiggle around to the music. That's not the way it works. You can play the song all day and they'll never move. You have to be the one to record it, each and every movement. See, Billy Bob's arm on its own doesn't look like much. See? Not much to that, huh? But you can take and push them all together, and Billy Bob can say goodbye, because this time here is done. Now, after you get to recording so many movements at a time, you start to see your show coming to life. Such as this example with the rocket fire explosion. Just give you a little sneak peek of the show I'm working with. That's just giving you a little idea of how the show starts coming to life. You do that 1, 2, or 3 movements at a time if you're lucky. It's very time consuming, takes a lot of dedication to entertain you, the public, and myself. So anyway, with no further ado, now you know how it works. Next stop, YouTube.
Back in college, my other big dream, besides collecting animatronics, was to be a rock star, and that was my other thing. And that was maybe one of the other reasons I really liked animatronics, is the whole concept of being in a band. And so when I got in junior high, I started playing guitar, and I played in a youth band, and I went through quite a few, and I switched to the bass guitar in high school. And when I started college, I joined this band called Radio Motive with these 2 girls, and we played around UNT a lot. We were actually the band of the year with my dorm, Bruce Hall, which was the reputation of being the crazy dorm. Our website's still up at www.radiomotive.com, and after I got out of high school, or after college, I kind of got out of it and moved on to other stuff, and that's where I really got into the animatronics. But I'm trying to get back into it, and I just cut a solo demo, so we'll see what happens with it.
Duke LaRue was the animatronic drummer for the Rocket Fire Explosion. He had his origins with the Wolfpack 5, and he started out as Dingo Star. And when he started with the Rocket Fire Explosion in '81, he wasn't the Duke that we've come to know in the spacesuit. He had a plaid shirt, he had gold chains, he had pants, and he had a weird little hat. And it came down to make him the Space Dog. So Duke LaRue changed from Dingo Star into the Space Drummer Dog we know. He made it to a second generation. Creative Engineering created a second generation Duke that had all kinds of articulation in his arms. He could cross over, and he had a massive drum set. And it's a shame that Showbiz closed before those second generation characters got to come out. Duke Chapetta, the voice for Duke LaRue, actually lives about 2 hours south of here in New Orleans, Louisiana. He's the last voice actor that I've yet to meet, and I hope to talk him into coming up here someday to Smitty's, and I want to meet him and get him to see my Duke LaRue. This is Mitsy Mozzarella. She was the female vocal lead for the Rocket Fire Explosion. She was voiced by Shalisa Sloan. Shalisa Sloan started singing Mitsy Mozzarella's voice when she was 11 years old, and she still voices her today. There was just a new show that Aaron did with the Shakira show, and Shalisa reprised her role for Mitsy. Mitsy is probably my second most favorite character, so much so that she's going to be my next tattoo. This is Beach Bear. He started out as the dumb surfer. He had the blonde wig, which actually they lost. Beach Bear lost the wig later on, and he was the bass guitar, which also sometimes was the lead guitar. But the coolest thing about Beach Bear was he had his own spotlight for his guitar. So, you know, when he would have his rock solos and he'd be rocking out on his guitar, you know, you could watch that spotlight come and shine on his guitar. And I'm glad they got away from the dumb perspective on him. Later on, when Rick Bailey took over for vocals for Beach Bear, he really took off, and he had his own persona, and he was probably a close second fiddle to Fats as far as the leader of the Rocket Fire Explosion group. I've always heard that from other people that the show scared them, especially Fats. Fats seemed to be the most intimidating for everyone, and I've experienced that here too. You know, a lot of the little kids are very intimidated by Fats. But as a kid growing up, when I went to Showbiz, the characters didn't scare me. I wasn't scared of them. You know, I was always anticipating, just trying to figure out which one was going to show and what show I was going to get to see. And to me, I was never afraid of the animatronics. I don't understand why some kids were. I guess, like I said, I'd already grown up going to Chuck E. Cheese too, so I was, already used to the animatronics, and there weren't anything to them that frightened me. I mean, it was a different experience for showbiz because they were so much more lifelike and so much more, they were larger than life as opposed to the Chuck E. Cheese characters. But I don't know why any of the little kids were very frightened by it. I could understand with Fats, but everybody else, I mean, even my little son, he's 1 year old now, and he loves the characters. He hates Chuck E. Cheese, and he loves Billy Bob. It's just, he has no fright whatsoever of the show.
My name's Travis Schaefer, and I'm 28 years old. I came from a small town in northern Colorado, Daytona, Colorado. It's real small on the map, probably half an hour from any city that's of any interest. I'm the founder and webmaster of ShowbizPizza.com. It's a fan site, Showbiz Pizza related, Rockfire related, and Chuck E. Cheese. And when I first started it, it was just me with some collectibles I had, a couple Rockfire dolls and records from my youth, a few pictures, and not too much else to go on. And I put it online in 1998 or 1999, and eventually people started coming out of the woodwork. I'd get people submitting photos, videos, music, just slow, bit by bit, I started adding it to my pile, and now it's one of the largest showbiz websites that's online. It's got an archive of history, photos, thousands of photos, hundreds of videos, and it's kind of been a melting pot, I guess, of all the different fans, and everybody contributes something a little bit differently, and we have annual conventions now, and it's one of those things, it's become a community when it didn't really start out that way. So it's kind of been interesting to me to see how when all these people get together, they share a common interest and they kind of form an online family of sorts. When I was a kid, my parents didn't have a lot of money, and even at 6, 7 years old, I was aware that we were poorer than most families. And like most kids, my dream in life was to go to Disney, and even then I knew that it was just kind of a pipe dream. It wasn't something that was really going to happen. But I did have Showbiz as a kid, and it was sort of my surrogate Disney, I guess you could say. When I first went to Showbiz, I was very afraid of the Rockfire explosion, and I don't know what it was. I knew that they were robots or something was off about them. They were real, but I guess I didn't understand them. It really threw me. But a year or two later, when I really started to go again, I gained an appreciation for them, and they were still intimidating to me, especially Fats, just because of his size. I mean, walking up to him today, he's still big, and it's 3 feet tall. He was gigantic, and I can just remember being mesmerized by the show. The lights, especially the lights. When the showroom used to be dim and dark, it was almost like watching a light show, and just as a kid, it was like it wasn't even like going to the movies. It was something unlike anything I could experience at home or anywhere else. So I can really remember being fascinated just by the show and everything that went with it. As a child, my favorite member of the Rockfire explosion was Billy Bob, and he was just so lovable. I had a Billy Bob doll, dragged it around. The thing was filthy, but it's one of those things I used to take to school for show and tell. I used to sleep with it. Hardly ever wanted to put it down. And most of the things I remember owning as a kid were Billy Bob related, and so he was always my favorite. But today, knowing more about the characters and having watched a lot of the shows and that, by far my favorite character is Fats. There's so much personality in him that's so unique, something that probably couldn't even be gotten away with today in his commandeering attitude, I guess. He's a real interesting character. He's kind of rough and tough, but he's also kind of lovable at the same time. And I don't know, something about Fats today really piques my interest, so he's definitely my favorite.